The movie opens on a basketball court, where the game kicks off the moment the whistle blows. The Wolves struggle in the beginning, barely keeping up, but in the final seconds, they make an incredible comeback. Following the coach's command, Dean passes the ball to Mason, and with perfect timing, Mason takes the shot and secures the win for his team. But in that very moment, something feels off. As Mason releases the ball, his eyes catch something terrifying in the crowd. A dark, unnatural shadow. It isn't human. It's something far worse. Shaken by what he saw, Mason panics and rushes into the locker room. Desperate and confused, he pulls out an old antique box and smashes it without understanding why. But somehow, breaking it gives him a strange sense of relief. Soon after, the rest of the team arrives, completely unaware of what just happened, and they begin celebrating their victory like everything is normal. Later, as Mason steps into the shower, the atmosphere shifts. Black smoke slowly rises from the drain, twisting and forming into the same horrifying monster he saw earlier. This time, it's even more terrifying, glowing like burning coal. Without warning, it lunges forward, wrapping its grip around Mason's throat and choking him. Before he can react, the creature forces its burning fist into his mouth, setting him ablaze from the inside. The monster then disappears, leaving chaos behind, while Mason's friends helplessly watch as he burns to death, unable to save him. In the next scene, we are introduced to a new girl named Chris, who has just joined the school. As she walks in, she immediately notices something strange. Every student is staring at her in an unsettling way. She is assigned Mason's locker, and when she opens it, she finds the same antique object that Mason had destroyed. Before she can process it, Mason's friends approach her and start bullying her, telling her she has no right to use that locker since it belonged to their friend. They mock and insult her, but just then, a girl named Ellie steps in and tries to defend her. Instead of backing down, the bullies only get worse, pushing Chris further until she finally snaps and punches one of them. A teacher witnesses the incident and immediately gives Chris detention on her very first day. However, Ellie steps forward and explains the truth, exposing the bully's behavior, which leads to all of them receiving detention instead, saving Chris from punishment. Even after that, Chris shows no gratitude. She coldly tells Ellie that she didn't need her help, leaving Ellie hurt and disappointed as she walks away. Now alone, Chris takes the antique object out of her locker and opens it carefully. Inside, she finds what looks like a small skull, which immediately frightens her. But as she examines it more closely, she realizes it isn't a real skull at all. It's actually a whistle, designed in the shape of one. As she studies it, strange and eerie sounds seem to echo from it, but she chooses to ignore them. Just then, the school bell rings, snapping her out of the moment. She puts the whistle in her bag and heads to class. As she places her bag down, the whistle accidentally falls out, catching everyone's attention. Another student immediately complains to the teacher, pointing out what Chris brought into the classroom. Chris calmly explains that she found it in her locker and hands it over. The teacher becomes instantly curious and begins examining it closely, while the rest of the students gather around. Using a magnifying glass, they discover an inscription carved into it. A strange and unsettling phrase. One of the students quickly searches it online and reveals its meaning. Calling death. Hearing this, the teacher decides to keep the object, claiming that it belongs to the school. Once class ends and everyone leaves, the teacher checks the whistle's value online and is shocked to find out it is worth thousands of dollars. Meanwhile, after the school is nearly empty, a boy named Ray realizes he forgot his book in the classroom and returns to get it. Inside, the teacher is alone, staring at the whistle, tempted to see if it actually works. The moment he blows it, a deafening sound bursts out, instantly shattering the classroom windows. Unaware that the whistle caused it, the teacher assumes something outside broke the glass and steps out to investigate. As soon as he leaves, Ray enters the room and begins searching for his book. While doing so, he notices the whistle lying on the table, along with the teacher's laptop screen showing its high price. Amazed by its value, Ray stares at it in disbelief before grabbing his book and leaving. Outside, he spots a boy talking to Chris. The boy pretends to act friendly, but in reality, he is trying to offer her drugs. Seeing this, Ray gets furious and immediately steps in, attempting to punch the boy. However, the situation suddenly escalates when the boy, Nova, pulls out a knife, stopping Ray in his tracks. The tension rises instantly, forcing Ray to back off. When Chris questions Ray about Nova, he reveals a disturbing truth. To adults, Nova appears to be a well-behaved, religious kid. But in reality, he secretly sells drugs to students, using his fake image to manipulate them. Ray warns her seriously to stay away from him. Meanwhile, back at school, the teacher returns to the classroom and opens the box, only to realize the whistle is missing. Unknown to him, Ray had already stolen it and is now proudly showing it off at a party later that evening. The teacher desperately searches the entire school for the whistle as night falls. By then, the building is nearly empty, with only a janitor left cleaning the halls. As the silence grows heavier, the teacher begins to hear strange, unsettling noises echoing through the corridors. When he steps out to investigate, he sees something horrifying. A limping, twisted figure slowly approaching him in the hallway. Before he can understand what he is seeing, the janitor suddenly calls out from behind. The teacher turns around for just a second, and when he looks back, the figure is gone. Trying to convince himself it was nothing, he returns to the classroom. But the moment he steps inside, the monster is already there, standing right in front of him. Before he can react or escape, the creature violently tears open his chest. It forces its hands inside his body and pulls out his lungs. Black liquid spills out of his mouth as he collapses, and the teacher is brutally killed. At the same time, the party continues. A girl named Grace, who had earlier researched the whistle, comes up with a dangerous idea. She confidently says that the whistle calls to death and suggests they should try blowing it themselves. Even though Chris is usually fearless, something about this feels wrong to her, and she suggests they should leave immediately. But Ellie stops her, and before anyone can think twice, Grace blows the whistle loudly. Everyone hears the sharp sound, but for Chris, it is different. Instead of the whistle, she hears slow, creepy footsteps approaching her, sending chills down her spine. When she tries to warn the others, they laugh it off and make fun of her, leaving her no choice but to walk away alone. Later that night, while doing chores at home, Chris suddenly notices a dark, eerie figure standing in a tree outside. At that exact moment, her sister walks in with coffee. Chris nervously asks if she can see anyone in the tree, but when she looks again, the figure has completely disappeared. The scene then shifts to Grace at her house. As she sits doing her homework, she starts to feel like someone is watching her. She tries to ignore the feeling, assuming it is just her younger brother playing around, but the fear slowly builds inside her. Just as she decides to leave the room, she suddenly feels a hand touch her face from behind. Terrified, she quickly turns around, only to see her brother standing at a distance, far too short to even reach her face. Trying to calm herself, she convinces herself that it must have been a trick. But as she walks away, we see the terrifying truth. The monster is standing right behind her. The next morning at school, the students are shaken by shocking news. Their teacher has died mysteriously overnight. They gather in the hallway for a prayer, struggling to process what happened, especially since he seemed completely fine just a day ago. During the prayer, Ellie notices something disturbing. A girl sitting across from her appears completely unnatural, with her head twisted backward in a horrifying position. Frightened, Ellie shuts her eyes, and when she looks again, everything is normal, making her question her own sanity. Later, the group begins to talk about the strange experiences they have all been having. Chris shares what she saw the previous night, and Ellie reveals her vision. Slowly, they begin to realize that something is seriously wrong. Ray pieces everything together and suggests that the whistle might have belonged to Mason, the boy who died. He believes that all these terrifying events could be happening because they took something that belonged to someone who is dead. Hoping to put an end to it, Chris and Ellie decide to return the whistle to Mason's house. When they arrive, they find the door strangely open, making the situation even more unsettling. Suddenly, Mason's mother appears in an unnatural and eerie way, almost as if she was expecting them. She leads them into a room filled with old and mysterious antiques, each one adding to the uneasy atmosphere. Chris tries to return the whistle to her, hoping it will fix everything. But to their shock, Mason's mother refuses to take it. She calmly tells them that the whistle never belonged to her. Then, with a chilling tone, she reveals a terrifying truth. The whistle is not something that can be owned or bought. The truth becomes even more terrifying as Mason's mother reveals that the whistle does not belong to anyone. It chooses its victims on its own. First, it chose Mason, and now it has chosen Chris. Shocked, Chris immediately denies it, explaining that she never blew the whistle. She tells her that one of her friends did it, believing the words carved on it meant it could call the dead. But Mason's mother corrects her with a chilling explanation. The phrase does not mean calling the dead, it means calling your own death. The meaning sounds unbelievable, but the woman continues. She explains that every person has a fixed time to die, a moment decided long before. However, if someone hears the whistle, their death is pulled forward. And it gets even worse. The victim's body begins to age instantly, reaching the exact age they were supposed to die naturally. If someone was meant to die at 80, their body will immediately turn 80, and they will die on the spot. Ellie struggles to believe any of this, thinking the woman has lost her mind. But Chris cannot ignore what she has already seen. Mason is dead, the teacher is dead, and no one knows how it happened. Determined to find the truth, Chris sneaks into the hospital records room, searching for answers. After going through multiple files, she finally finds Mason's autopsy report. What she reads shocks her completely. The report states that Mason's body had the condition of a 40-year-old man. That confirms everything. Mason was meant to live until 40, and the whistle forced his body to age instantly to that point, killing him. Fear takes over Chris as she realizes the horrifying truth. She and all her friends heard the whistle, which means every one of them is now marked for death. Without wasting a second, Chris and Ellie rush to find their friends before it is too late. On their way, a troublemaker tries to block them, but Chris, filled with anger, punches him and pushes past, knowing he is the one who deals drugs to students. They finally reach the place where their friends are hanging out, but something is wrong. Grace is missing. At the same time, Grace is trapped inside a dark, twisted maze. It is meant to be a funhouse, but now it feels like a nightmare. Something is chasing her, something evil. She spots the monster following her through the maze. It moves closer with every step, refusing to stop. Terrified but desperate, Grace decides to fight back. She grabs a fake weapon nearby and swings it at the creature. But it does nothing. Instead, she is thrown to the ground. She gets up and runs again, only to find her path blocked. With no other choice, she crawls into a narrow tunnel, hoping to escape. Just when she thinks she is safe, the monster grabs her leg. Fighting with everything she has, Grace kicks violently until she finally breaks free and escapes the tunnel. At last, she reaches the finish line, believing she has made it out alive. But before she can step forward, a horrifying old woman suddenly drops from above. The woman grabs Grace and begins draining her life. In seconds, Grace's body starts aging rapidly, her youth disappearing as she transforms into an old woman right before our eyes. Within moments, she collapses, dead at the finish line. When Dean finds her, he is completely shaken. Looking at her face, he cannot even recognize her anymore. Grace is gone. Soon after, he meets Chris and Ellie. The girls try to explain everything, telling him that they are all cursed because they heard the whistle. They warn him that death is coming for all of them, and their bodies will age rapidly before they die. But Dean refuses to believe it. He convinces himself that he is too young for something like this to happen. Trying to escape his fear, he turns to drugs and heads home, hoping to forget everything. Meanwhile, Ray is sitting alone on a rooftop when something horrifying happens. Blood suddenly begins to rain down on him. But just as quickly as it appears, it vanishes. It was never real, just a terrifying illusion. This is the moment they all realize the truth. Chris and Ellie were right all along, and now none of them are safe. The next day, Chris returns to see Mason's mother, hoping to find a way out of the curse. But this time, the woman looks extremely weak, barely holding on to life. With her final strength, she reveals one last terrifying truth. Death cannot be stopped, but it can be passed on. The curse can be transferred to another person, meaning someone else can be sacrificed in your place. Before Chris can react, she suddenly sees a horrifying vision of her own death in the mirror. The image shakes her to the core. When the vision fades, she turns back, only to find that Mason's mother has died in her bed. Meanwhile, Dean is still trying to convince himself that none of this is real, but when he turns on the TV, he hears the shocking news of Grace's death. His confidence begins to break, and he starts to wonder if Chris and Ellie were telling the truth all along. Just then, his door slowly creaks open. A monstrous hand pushes through the gap, reaching toward him. Terrified, Dean slams the door shut on it, causing blood to splatter everywhere. In panic, he drags heavy furniture and blocks the door, thinking he can keep it out. But this is no ordinary threat. In the next moment, the monster appears right behind him. Before Dean can even react, the ghostly figure drives its hand straight through his body. Hearing his screams, his parents rush in, only to witness him collapse and die right in front of them. At the same time, Ray comes up with a desperate plan to survive. He decides to pass the curse onto someone else, choosing Nova, the drug dealer, as his target. Ray tracks him down and attacks him, trying to force the curse onto him. But Nova is stronger. He fights back, grabs Ray's gun, and shoots him without hesitation. However, Ray knows something Nova doesn't. The curse won't let him die from something as simple as a bullet. Using this moment, Ray grabs Nova and tries to smear his blood onto him to transfer the curse. Just then, Chris and Ellie arrive and try to stop him, but Ray refuses to listen. Before he can complete the transfer, his time runs out. In a brutal and horrifying moment, his arm twists unnaturally, and his entire body is crushed by an invisible force, as if something massive has slammed into him. Ray dies instantly. Now, only Chris and Ellie remain. With no other options left, they come up with a risky and desperate plan to cheat death itself. Ellie has an insulin kit, and Chris suggests something extreme. She asks Ellie to stop her heart using the injection, then drown her, and bring her back immediately after she dies. Chris believes that if her heart stops, the curse might end, and then she can save Ellie the same way. They prepare themselves, knowing there is no turning back. As the injection takes effect, Chris begins to see the monster of death again. But this time, she does not run. Ellie pushes her underwater, holding her down as Chris slowly stops moving. When Chris goes still, Ellie pulls her out and desperately tries to revive her. She performs CPR and even uses an electric shock machine, but nothing seems to work. Inside her mind, Chris finds herself fighting the monster in a dark, endless space. The creature drags her deeper into the water, trying to pull her into death. But Chris keeps pushing upward, following a faint light, guided by Ellie's voice calling out to her. Memories of their friendship give her strength as she fights against the darkness. At the same time, Nova regains consciousness. Furious and confused, he starts searching for the girls, unaware that Ray is already dead. He tracks them down, breaks into the room, and cuts the power, shutting off the machine Ellie is using to save Chris. In that moment, Ellie begins to see her own death approaching, but she refuses to give up. She continues pressing on Chris's chest, determined to bring her back. Finally, Chris reaches the light in her vision, and in the real world, she suddenly gasps for air and comes back to life. The plan worked. But before she can celebrate, she sees Ellie collapse to the floor, bleeding. The curse has now moved onto Ellie. Just as Ellie is about to die, Nova walks in and steps into her blood, unknowingly touching it. In an instant, the curse transfers to him. Ellie stops dying, and now Nova becomes the target. Terrified, Nova tries to fight back, shooting at the monster, but the bullets pass right through it. The creature attacks him mercilessly and kills him in a brutal way. With that, the nightmare finally ends. Chris and Ellie survive. Months later, life seems normal again. The two have become close friends, and although Chris still experiences occasional visions, she chooses to ignore them. She believes she has defeated the curse and will live a full life without fear. But in the final moments of the film, everything changes. A new girl arrives at the school and is assigned the same locker Chris once used. When she opens it, she finds the cursed skull whistle. Without knowing its dark history, she carries it with her to the morning assembly. As Chris and Ellie spot the whistle in her hand, they panic and scream, trying to warn her. But they are too far away. Before they can reach her, the girl blows the whistle directly into the microphone. The sound echoes through the entire school. Everyone hears it. The curse has returned, and this time it has spread to all. The movie ends on a chilling cliffhanger, leaving one terrifying question behind. Who will survive now?